Have you ever wondered why one of rock's biggest names, Bon Jovi, would actually say no to touring with certain legendary bands? You'd think any collaboration would be a dream gig, but behind the stage lights and screaming crowds, the music business has its fair share of rivalries, egos, and tough decisions. Today on Backstage Tales, we're diving into the fascinating true story of 6 bands Bon Jovi refused to tour with, and the surprising reasons why. Some were about survival, some about strategy, and a few pure pride. Stick around, because number 1 on this list might shock you the most. Before we get into the refusals, let's rewind a little. In the 1980s, Bon Jovi exploded onto the rock scene. With Slippery When Wet in New Jersey, they weren't just another glam rock band, they were defining the sound of stadium rock. But with great success comes big decisions. Touring was the backbone of any band's career, but not every pairing made sense. For Bon Jovi, choosing the right opening act, or the right headliner to support, wasn't just about music. It was about image, business, and keeping their own empire intact. 1. Guns N' Roses. On paper, this would have been a powerhouse lineup. Bon Jovi and Guns N' Roses, both selling millions, both ruling MTV. But John Bon Jovi reportedly turned it down. Why? Because of reputation. Guns N' Roses were notorious for chaos, late starts, on-stage fights, and controversial antics. John Bon Jovi, on the other hand, prided himself on reliability. He once said, "The fans deserve the full show every night." Pairing with Guns N' Roses might have risked his band's polished reputation. 2. Metallica. In the early 90s, Metallica was rewriting the rules of heavy music. There was talk of pairing them with Bon Jovi on a massive co-headline run. But it never happened. Why? The audiences didn't match. Bon Jovi leaned into arena-friendly anthems, while Metallica was courting hardcore metalheads. Mixing the two could have created tension, or worse, alienated both fan bases. John said no, choosing to stay in his lane instead of competing with the heaviest act in the world. 3. Mötley Crüe. Another, almost tour, that was shut down quick. Mötley Crüe and Bon Jovi came up around the same time, but behind the scenes, their relationship was tense. Nikki Sixx once admitted there was bad blood between the bands, partly fueled by competition for MTV dominance and who could sell out bigger arenas. John Bon Jovi didn't want to risk being overshadowed, or worse, dragged into Mötley's constant tabloid scandals. 4. Kiss reunion era. In 1996, the rock world went into overdrive when Kiss reunited in full makeup with the original lineup: Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Ace Frehley, and Peter Criss. The Alive worldwide tour was one of the biggest events in rock history, stadiums packed, pyrotechnics bigger than ever, and nostalgia selling at full price. Kiss invited several powerhouse acts to join the bill, and Bon Jovi's name floated to the top of the list. After all, they had the hits, the global appeal, and the fan overlap. But John Bon Jovi politely declined. Why? 2 reasons. First, status. By the mid-90s, Bon Jovi had graduated from opening slots into bona fide headliners. To appear under Kiss, even during such a monumental comeback, would risk making them look like second tier. John understood that image mattered as much as music. Second, there was audience control. A Kiss crowd was unique, rowdy, cult-like, and fiercely devoted to Gene and Paul. Bon Jovi, on the other hand, had built a wider mainstream audience that included more women and crossover fans from pop radio. Pairing them could have created an awkward mix, and John wasn't willing to gamble with momentum. So, while Kiss and Bon Jovi shared respect, this was one invitation that never made it past the talking stage. 5. Van Halen. Few bands embodied 80s excess like Van Halen. From Eddie's groundbreaking guitar work to David Lee Roth's flamboyant stage antics, they were pure electricity. Even after Roth left and Sammy Hagar took over, Van Halen were still kings of the arena. At one point, there was serious industry buzz about a joint tour, Van Halen and Bon Jovi, two titans of rock, sharing the same bill. On paper, it sounded like a dream lineup, guitar wizardry meets anthem rock storytelling. But John Bon Jovi shut it down. And here's why. Competition. Every night would have been a battle for the spotlight. Van Halen were notorious for stealing shows, and their technical musicianship could easily make Bon Jovi look tame in comparison. John had worked too hard to carve his own path and didn't want to risk being overshadowed. He preferred to headline tours where Bon Jovi could control the energy, the pacing, and the legacy without worrying about being outgunned. It's worth noting, too, that Van Halen carried drama everywhere they went. Between Roth's ego, Hagar's clashes, and the internal feuds, they were a circus behind the curtain. For a calculated leader like John Bon Jovi, that chaos was reason enough to steer clear. 6. Def Leppard. Now, here's the one that stings the most. Because Bon Jovi and Def Leppard were more than peers, they were friends. Both bands rose from the late 70s, early 80s scene, both dominated MTV in the mid-80s, and both managed to survive massive shifts in rock by the early 90s. There was even talk of a joint, mega tour. Two of the biggest rock hit makers of the decade, joining forces to conquer stadiums. Fans would have killed for it. So why didn't it happen? Simple. Money and market share. By the late 80s, both Bon Jovi and Def Leppard were selling out arenas on their own. If they toured together, they'd have to split the revenue, share the spotlight, and possibly exhaust the same pool of fans who could only afford one ticket. From a business standpoint, touring separately meant both bands could maximize profits. But there's another layer. Def Leppard had a reputation for intricate, polished production. Every note had to sound like the album. Bon Jovi leaned more on raw crowd interaction and sing-along power. The fear was that the two styles might clash rather than complement. So, John Bon Jovi made the tough call to decline. No feud, no bad blood, just pure strategy. Ironically, fans have kept asking for that double bill for decades, but the moment never came. What do all these refusals tell us? Bon Jovi wasn't just a rock star. He was a strategist. He knew the value of reputation, of controlling the spotlight, and of protecting his band from bad publicity or mismatched crowds. In a world where one wrong tour could damage a career, saying no was sometimes more powerful than saying yes. So next time you hear a Bon Jovi anthem blasting through the speakers, remember, it's not just the music that made them legends. It was the tough calls, the bands they walked away from, and the business instincts that kept them on top. Now, here's the question for you. If Bon Jovi had toured with Guns N' Roses or Metallica, would rock history look different today? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. Thanks for watching Backstage Tales. If you love true stories of rivalries, feuds, and the backstage secrets of rock and roll, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because we've got plenty more untold tales coming your way.